Hello there, and welcome back to the channel. Mad Mike here, and before I go into the subject of the video, let's just give a shout out to Weaponized Nerd Rage. Thank you very much for the recent influx of subscribers, and I'd like to thank you for the comments very much, and to everybody who's new to the channel, welcome, and thank you very much for subscribing. So we're going to get to the subject of today, which was my speculation on the future film slate for the Marvel Cinematic Universe moving forward past 2019. Now, obviously, we know that Captain Marvel will be released in May, Avengers Endgame is coming at the end of April, and Spider-Man Homecoming is going to be here over, or not Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home will be here over the summer. So I'm going to kind of skip past those because we kind of already know a good amount about those. Spider-Man probably the least of all, but we kind of know where that's going. So I'd rather go into 2020 and beyond because they currently have 3 films slated for 2020, and they've stated, Kevin Feige has stated that they have 20 films planned between 2020 and 2028. So I'm in between, which means it's not counting 2020, so it's up till 2028. So we have a total of 23 films right now, aside from the 3 that we know about that are going to be going into production at some point in the next 9 years. So let's just go over the ones we do know about. So obviously Spider-Man Far From Home is the one that's the furthest in the future that we know 100% is coming out, and we know what date and everything like that, and most of it's all been taken care of. We've seen trailers and so on and so forth. So you have after you have that, then we have the Black Widow movie, which is reportedly, it was supposed to start filming recently, but I guess it's been pushed back to June. So we'll see how that works. But she is definitely getting her own solo movie, which should be interesting. And the rumors for that are that it may be taking place sometime before Infinity War, maybe having to do with that encounter she had with Winter Soldier that she alludes to in Captain America, the Winter Soldier. So that'll be interesting. And then the other one, which was supposed to have already begun production, was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And obviously we know the whole James Gunn situation. Currently, Marvel is still looking for a director for that project because Taika Waititi, the director of Thor Ragnarok, which many thought would get that role or that project, has decided that he does not want said project, and he will not work on it because it is he thinks it's too much of James Gunn's thing, and he doesn't want to ruin the tone of the films. Personally, I think he would make a very good stand-in director for James Gunn, and I think his humor would fit very well into that series. But he has turned that down already. I believe he has stated in an interview that he hadn't even been asked about it, but he was asked about it. Hadn't been asked about it by Marvel themselves, but he had been asked about it in an interview, and he had turned it down. He had said, "No, I will not be doing that." So past Guardians 3, whenever that decides to go into production, after that, it's pretty much the Wild West for movies. There's really not a whole lot, so that only takes up 2 slots in 2020. So you would still have a 3rd film. So films that have been, so those are the films that we have that are confirmed, that we know are going to happen at some point. Now we have films that are kind of confirmed / rumored, films that Kevin Feige has talked about and wants to do, but whether or not they're actually going to fit into the slate and where is an entirely different question. So like I said, we have 21 slots available right now, so I'm just going to rattle off some of these. So obviously a Black Panther sequel, because that movie did amazing. So now you're down to 20. Doctor Strange sequel, because that movie did very well. Now you're down to 19. And apparently there is a Shang-Chi movie which is going into production, which should be interesting, because Marvel has stated they wanted to dive into films that involve some kind of Asian flair, I guess is how you'd put it. I'm not 100% sure, but it definitely follows the line of the diversity angle, which could be good or bad depending on who you have writing the story and who you have in the film. But apparently that has been very strongly rumored, and apparently a script is also in the works currently for that film. And then we also have the Eternals movie that Kevin Feige has alluded to, which would be very interesting because that would tell the backstory of how mutants came into the MCU, or the history of mutants, and then that would lead up into possible X-Men or X-Force and spin-offs and things like that. So the Eternals movie, I think that's probably going to happen. I think it's most likely, because, especially because Kevin Feige has mentioned it multiple times in interviews, and I believe they said that they have a script currently in the works, and it would be probably a very good way of introducing the X-Men into the MCU. Now, the last one, which is would be personally interesting to me, would be a return to Blade, because Marvel has gotten the property rights back to the Blade franchise, which was put into production by New Line Cinemas in the late 90s and early 2000s. Obviously, we know Blade 1 and 2 were instant classics. Unfortunately, Blade Trinity, which had a plethora of production issues, ranging from Wesley Snipes attempting to strangle the director, to the director hiring security, to the two of them communicating through post-it notes, and very, very strange things that happened on that movie set. But Wesley Snipes has stated that he has had meetings with Marvel about 2 separate Blade projects. One of them is 100% got to be a movie. It's got to be some kind of a movie. And the second one is probably a TV series, or maybe a mini series or something like that, to put on their little streaming network they're going to be doing in the next year or so for Disney. But I would like to see Snipes come back. I think he did an amazing job. I think doing maybe an older, more grizzled type of Blade would be very interesting, especially if they say that the first 2 films, or even the third one, if you want to really lump it in, the Blade trilogy is canon to the MCU. That would be very interesting to see if maybe you carry that timeline into the future. So now that we have those movies out of the way, so these are the ones that are just getting thrown out there, and some of them are ones that I would personally like to see. Some of them are ones that have been rumored over time that we might see. So we're just going to have to, again, everything after those first 3, Spider-Man Far From Home, Black Widow, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, take with a grain of salt, because nothing has been 100% confirmed, but a lot of them are very, very likely before that, and then obviously you have the ones I'm about to list. So I'm just going to go over that quick. So a Moon Knight movie, which was rumored a while back. They were going to do, I think they were going to do a Netflix series at one point. They were thinking about expanding that, and they didn't. There was supposedly a script in production for a Moon Knight film, which again would have been interesting. But that is still on the table. I think that would be an interesting character to introduce into the MCU, especially maybe into like introduce him as like a side character in like one of the next Spider-Man movie or something, or something like that, and then give him his own little spin-off thing later on. But Moon Knight movie would be interesting. There's rumors that Thor, assuming he survives Avengers Endgame, there's rumors that Chris Hemsworth is going to be signed on for a Thor 4 because of the success of Thor Ragnarok, and I would assume Taika Waititi would come back to direct that film. So that would be very interesting. And then we go on to Spider-Man, who is obviously getting a 3rd installment because they want to get that franchise for as much as they can. And Sony wants to keep making money because they make money from the solo films. And of course, Marvel wants to make money because they make a buttload of money from him with the team-up films. So you're going to have a Spider-Man 3 and 4. One of them will probably be a Sinister Six movie. I would imagine it would be the 4th one. And the 3rd one, maybe you'll get Venom or something like that. But you're probably going to at least have 2 installments in there, especially if they rework the deal that they currently have with him between Marvel Studios and Disney and Sony Pictures. So that'll be interesting. So again, that knocks off 4 spots, so we're down to 12. So now you have Daredevil. I think that they're going to do a Daredevil reboot film. I don't know if they're going to have Charlie Cox back. I would love to see them have Charlie Cox back as the Daredevil character and kind of push him onto the silver screen. I think it would be a good way to introduce maybe a harder version of MCU film. Now that they have some franchises like Deadpool that they've acquired from the Fox deal. I think maybe putting characters like Daredevil into a film like that would be very, very good for the series. And Daredevil's one of their A-list characters in terms of publication. Everybody knows about him. And, even though the Netflix show is amazing, I think that you should try to incorporate him a little bit more into the film aspect as well. I don't think there should be as much of a separation, especially now that they have canceled the Netflix series. So that's that. But then we go on to another Netflix one, which is Punisher. Now, I am a huge fan of the 2004 Punisher film with Thomas Jane. I think he did an amazing job. I don't really like Punisher Warzone, which was the sequel where they switched out Thomas Jane for, I can't even remember the actor's name. But I like Thomas Jane. I really like John Barathol. And he does an amazing job as the Punisher. He actually makes you feel for that character as opposed to Thomas Jane, which has more of a Wild West action-y feel to it. And also just the John Barathol Punisher, the brutality of the shit that he does. Just look back to some of the scenes from Punisher season 1 and 2, and you could see the scene at the end of the first season when he just bashes the guy's face into the mirror over and over and over again. That is that pure anger that is the Punisher. And I think he would be interesting to see incorporated into the main Marvel Universe in some way, shape, or form. But I think he deserves another theatrical outing because that Thomas Jane one was really good. And if you put John Barathol, who I think is a superior Punisher in terms of acting, into a theatrical film, I think you could do a lot of good there. So we'll see about that, but it should be relatively interesting. And now we're going to move on to another character who is currently on, or has been on, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show, which again, I think he should get another outing on the silver screen, and that's Ghost Rider. And here's the thing. Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance is a piece of shit movie. It was a bad movie. It's just Nick Cage going insane on screen for an hour and a half, 2 hours. The first one I didn't mind. The Sam Elliott previous Ghost Rider was very interesting. I thought that was a very good add-on, and I like Sam Elliott. And actually, Nick Cage was pretty good in the first movie, even though he didn't act completely like a crazy lunatic. But I thought the first Ghost Rider movie was good, and I think that he can be incorporated into the Marvel Universe. Again, I think that they need to go in the route of, you need to establish kind of the street heroes a little more. You have Spider-Man, but he's, a big popular character, and he kind of transcends the street level because he goes off with the Avengers and stuff like that. I think you need the Daredevil, you need the Punisher, you need the Ghost Rider. You need those guys that are kind of a level below the Iron Mans and the Captain Americas, where they're kind of working in the shadows or underneath. Blade would be in that bunch too. But I think that you kind of need that just to show that there's this underworld in the MCU, that you have this big bright upper world, but then you have kind of this darker, seedier underworld, and it would work very well, I feel like. So you get Ghost Rider out of the way. And I didn't mention the other Netflix shows, which some of them have been canceled, like Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, which will probably be canceled after its third season comes out, I think later this year. But those, I think, will be interesting. I think if you did like a Heroes for Hire movie or something like that, that would be interesting to put those characters in, or a Luke Cage Iron Fist film or something like that. But I don't have that on the docket right now because a lot of it's still up in the air. And then the next one we have, you're going to have an Avengers 5 and you're going to have an Avengers 6. I don't know if you will have a third Avengers film in that time frame. You might not. But I think you're going to at least get two. And one of them, I can almost 100% say, is probably going to be Kang the Conqueror. And if you get the other one, I think you might get Galactus, because now you have the Fantastic Four and the X-Men coming in as well. So 5 and 6, Kang the Conqueror, Galactus, I think that would be very interesting if they led up to that. But I think Kang will come first because they can use him before they can use Galactus, because Galactus is mixed in with that Fantastic Four bunch that they're still working through all the legal stuff in order to get those characters in there. But we'll move past that. So an X-Men premiere film that's going to come in to the MCU, and you might have some other movies that are going to go in there that are going to introduce these characters beforehand. You might have Storm show up in Black Panther 2, which I think would be pretty interesting if they did that. You could have Wolverine show up in another movie before that because he's kicking around the Marvel Universe supposedly at this point, if it's following a relatively similar timeline. So go with that, but I think you're going to have an X-Men movie. You'll probably go with the base team. They'll go with as young as they can get, teenagers and stuff like that. They'll probably young actors. They'll sign them all for years, so that way they can get them for 2, 3, 4 films, depending on how far this goes. I think you'll probably get at least 2 films, depending on when that first film comes out, maybe 3. But I think you'll at least get 2. So I put X-Men and then plus 1 sequel to the X-Men on there as well. And I think the same thing with Fantastic Four. I think X-Men and Fantastic Four are probably going to premiere around the same time. And again, Fantastic Four, you can introduce Galactus in that film, which would then be reintroduced in an Avengers film later on, which would feature the Fantastic Four probably fairly prominently. So you have that as a lead up, but you have Fantastic Four and you have the characters associated with that. And again, I think you're going to get at least one establishing film, and then you'll get a sequel after that. And depending on when it comes out, similar to the X-Men, you might get a third before that 2028 date. So there's that. Now to go back to the Hulk versus Wolverine, that would be a very interesting film, and I'd like to see that. And I think it would be a great way to introduce Wolverine. You could use Hulk in that film, assuming he survives Endgame, which I think he probably will. But assuming he survives Endgame, I think you could do that, and it would be really, really interesting to see that on screen, because that's how Wolverine is introduced in the comic books. So to see Hulk go up against Wolverine would be pretty awesome on screen. And then we move past that to Captain Marvel. It might get a sequel, it might not. I'm just going to stick it in here because generally they at least like to make a couple of them, even if they don't make a crap ton of money. And I still think that film is probably going to be successful because of the MCU. So I think the Captain Marvel will get a second film in that series. Now, this is another one that I kind of feel like they need to do. And this is the last one on this list. And that is the Silver Surfer. You're going to get Silver Surfer with the Fantastic Four videos. And once you have him, you're going to be able to use him in the cosmic sense. And I think if you do a Silver Surfer film that sets up Galactus before you do him in an Avengers film, that would be very good. And I think you need to expand that cosmic realm, because right now all we have really in the cosmic realm of Marvel is you have the Guardians of the Galaxy films, you have Thor Ragnarok, sort of, and then you have now you have Avengers Infinity War, and presumably Endgame as well. But you really don't have much past that. I think you need to expand it. I know they've been talking about a Nova film as well, but they kind of introduced the Nova Corps. I don't necessarily know if you need Richard Rider. Maybe you could introduce him as a side character in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 or something like that. And if he does well enough, give him a spin-off. But I think Silver Surfer could do a movie on his own very easily, because his backstory is so vast even before he gets to Earth and goes up against the Fantastic Four. So those are my picks. Like them or hate them. Some of them are personal. Some of them are ones that have been confirmed or at least have been talked about. And I think that's going to fill up the slate until 2028. And we might get a few more here and there, maybe, if they decide to expand closer to Christmas or something like that, like what they did with Thor Ragnarok, where I believe that came out in November. So, I mean, you could get up to 4 movies in a year, which would be pretty insane, especially if they all make money. If you have any movies that maybe you want to see in the MCU, put them in the comments below. And remember, hit the like button, hit the bell for notifications, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?